So I went to Philadelphia recently, and I think it's pretty safe to say that I had an interesting experience with the subway system there. When I got down to the actual like platform where you board the trains, I could not help but notice it just fucking reeked of weed down there. And I look around, and maybe like 15 feet down the platform from me, there's two people just smoking weed. They're hotboxing the underground metro station, which is crazy. And I thought to myself, like, this compared to some of the subway systems I've been on isn't that bad, but I wonder how bad can it get? So I think that's what we're going to be looking into a little bit here. So let's get into it. What is the best and worst public transport systems you've ever used? Best, London Tube, which I do not doubt. London Tube is kind of sick. Worst, Moldova's entire transportation system. So I saw this comment and I looked into it a little bit, and to say that Moldova even has a public transit system could be a little bit of a stretch. Really, from what I've seen, their metro system just consists of... What is the capital of Moldova? Anyway, to say any city in Moldova, let alone Chisinau here, has a public transport system is a bit of a stretch. I mean, it's really dependent on what you would classify a public transport system, but goddamn, from what I've seen, it's really just a series of like these minibuses, which I've seen are pretty popular like around Eastern Europe. So like they don't have like preset bus routes or anything. You just kind of walk around the city and wave down one of these minibuses until it picks you up and you get in, and then from there it's really just like you got to tell the driver where you want to go. And it's technically public transport, right? Because it's not just you in this bus. So I guess this is like the ultimate form of Uber pool. Yeah, no, they use small buses for 8 people. If you're over 6 foot, good luck. There is often no space and they drive at insane speeds on 2-way highways. I'm never going to the country again, even if I have relatives. Worst place in Europe, I despise it. Even Romania looks too first world compared to Moldova. God damn. These minibuses, these are not just like contained to Europe. There's the video of the Chinese minibus. I should turn this off. Yeah, Hong Kong crazy minibus driver video dubbed for entertainment purposes. Yeah, so this isn't actually the original video. I think this is like a Japanese bus driver, like POV cam that they dubbed over with audio from a minibus, which is like one of these things. What the is this? Jesus Christ. So yeah, I mean, right here, this is pretty much Moldova's entire public transport system, which I got into a fight with a minibus driver. Bizarre and unsettling experience on minibus. What is this subreddit? This is subreddit dedicated to posting everything that is related to the Republic of Georgia. Oh, hell yeah. Today, I boarded a van from City 1 to City 2 and had an experience that left me a bit perturbed, and I'm trying to understand what happened. Everything's going fine. People at City A station were helpful. About 20 minutes into the trip, a man boards the van and sits right behind the drivers. Everyone looks Georgian, but I'm no expert. He is no expert, everybody. Maybe 20 minutes later, I start noticing that people are more talkative. The man behind the driver is talking a bit loud, but I'm used to this and mind my own business. However, they start getting louder and louder. Soon, both Mystery Man and the second driver are screaming at each other. They scream at each other for 5 to 10 minutes. I have no idea if someone has a weapon or is getting robbed, so I hide my passport and just try and mind my own business. I've never seen 2 people reach that level of angry without throwing a punch. People calm down in 2 minutes like nothing happened. What the f? Old guy gets off 10 minutes later. A mysterious man gets off an hour later without a word, and we reach Batumi. Okay. Alright, top comment. Our Shutka rides are nothing but entertaining. Once the driver got annoyed with the music, took out the CD, and threw it out the window. Alright. Worst, Dolmus, Turkey. It's a roller coaster without seatbelts, especially Ascari. Alright. Worst, Phoenix, Arizona. Public transportation system consists of one tram line that stops running at about 10 p.m. Not that it is safe to ride after sundown anyway. The city is a Mad Max dystopia where you need to drive and drive fast through the gridded highways place they call a city. Worst, New York Metro. Not because it was super bad with being on time, it was average in that aspect, but because most stations look like they have been neglected for at least 100 years. NYC public transportation system looks post-apocalyptic. You can tell how much this person has traveled around the world, given that this is what they consider like a horrid public transportation system. Because let me tell you, it gets much worse than this. And I know that like he's probably referring to the underground metro system, but even then, like New York is not too bad. Worst train ride, Aswan to Cairo, supposed to be 11 hours overnight, turned out to be 18. People on the phone talking all night, very loud in general. The train stopped like a kilometer before the final station in Cairo, as I could see on the maps with my last 2% of battery. After half an hour, the first people were leaving the train and just walking along the tracks. There was no way to get off the tracks, so waited for another hour till the train finally started moving again. By the time I left the train, my battery died and it took me another 3 hours to get to the hostel. All in all, Egypt was pretty fun though. Worst train ride, Prague to Berlin, summer of 1993, overnight train. I slept on the floor atop my backpack while chickens ran loose in the cabin and eventually shit all over the place. It was pretty miserable on a Soviet-era train with windows that wouldn't go down and people smoking and chicken shit. There were more people than tickets on board. Until we got to right before the border to Germany. The train slowed to a crawl and over half the train, along with the chickens which were rounded up, jumped off into the dark of the forest before they came by to check passports. I had a hard bench to try to sleep on after that. There was still chicken. What are the worst metro systems? This is a banger thread, by the way. This is banger. The Abuja Metro accounts for just the sheer number of dumb decisions involved in its construction. This is in Nigeria, by the way, I believe. Instead of building one of the lines that would pass through high-density areas and serve office commuters, they started with the line to the airport. This line passes through industrial areas with next to no residential areas. In addition, all stations are more or less in the middle of nowhere, with even a few stations near housing being fairly far and poorly accessible. Access roads to the stations were never completed. The frequency was just 4 trips a day at launch. At least when they initially built this metro system, it ran exclusively through industrial zones with very little access to the public, and all of the access roads to the stations weren't completed or didn't exist. This is pretty much a full-scale model train set. This is what they're describing. For the icing on the cake, the line opened with just 2 stations operational, the city center and the airport. I mean, that's just unfortunate. I think this is the result of just blatant corruption. Corrupt practices are deeply entrenched across various levels of Nigeria's government and society.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved. Yes. But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it.
Judiciary often undermining the delivery of basic services. There we go. Yeah, so we're back on the what is the worst metro systems thread. One guy says San Juan Tren Urbano. It might be one of the worst performing systems in the world in ridership. This is one of the few metro systems I've ridden where I've felt safety concerns riding in the middle of the afternoon. That's horrible. It's so eerie at the Sagrado Corazon terminal. Okay, so the Tren Urbano is the main public transport system serving San Juan. Great. Cincinnati subway. Honest to God, I didn't even know they had that. City national leaders respond to a video of a brawl in downtown Cincinnati goes viral.
It's a fight on Elm and 4th Street in downtown Cincinnati, an area he said.
Anyone else think the signage in Taipei Station is confusing? It's already a weird, sprawling layout in Taipei Main Station, but the signage is just terrible and inconsistent. Trying to find a specific exit is very difficult. Anyone else agree? Yes, there's only so many signs and sometimes they point in unclear directions. This place is amazing. I found this guy who is, I guess, like the arch wizard of navigating Asian train stations.
This place is known to cause headaches, tears, nightmares, arguments, but the one thing it won't cause, starvation.
All right, thanks, man. We gotta talk about the NYC subway system to cap off this video. I know I said earlier that the one guy was out of his mind if he thought this was the worst rail system, and that is true. There are probably like public transport systems that you could get on elsewhere in the world and you would have a higher likelihood of dying than you would in NYC, but I mean, you gotta admit there are some banger stories that come out of here. The most dangerous / unsafe station in all of NYC subway, 125th and Lex Zombie Avenue, 11:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Your New York toughness will be challenged here. The worst ride in the system is 4 to 5 express between 86th and 125th peak direction. There's zombies, quote unquote, K2, both in and out of the station because the city is at war with the problem in this intersection for over a decade now. Zombies frequent, dude, this guy keeps calling them zombies, that's crazy. Zombies frequent for trash on the tracks to sell at recycle centers for the aforementioned. On the tracks, dude? An old man approached me there asking me to marry his daughter for US citizenship. Both 116th and 125th on the Lexington Ave line are pretty rough, especially at night. I once walked out of 116th station to see a street vendor getting robbed with a needle.